So hello and welcome to our interview event. I am Christopher McClure here, and today we have her back. It's Simran. We're talking with Simran today about her newest book here, Being the Seven Illusions that Derail Personal Power, Purpose, and Peace. And we want to catch up today to learn more about this book. We'll talk about the self-realization series more and all that. But for those of you who don't know, a little background on Simran here. Simran is a globally recognized speaker and catalyst for love, compassion, and humanity. As an example for a New World experience of aliveness, she advocates for the visionary and mystic embodiment within each person, while engaging individuals in their embrace of lights and their darkest depths too. You're not afraid to go into those areas as well. That's important. So to uncover the brilliance of light. Simran is a #1 rated archive syndicated host of Voice America's 1111 Talk Radio, host of 1111 Interviews TV, and publisher of the Nautilus Award-winning 1111 magazine. She's the author of the IPPY and IPA Gold Award-winning Conversations with the Universe, Your Journey to Enlightenment, and the IPPY Gold Award-winning Your Journey to Love. Simran creates art books and online courses to bridge humanity's experience and expressions. Along with being a TEDx speaker, Simran is creator of the one-woman show, The Rebel Road, connecting the dots from what was to what is. Now, in the Self-Realization series, Simran reveals incredible insights after having gone through the discovery of multidimensional living that brought awareness to a powerful set of blessings, illusions, and graces that not only impact individual humanity, but also each individual's capacity to be change in our world. The books in the series are Living the Seven Blessings of Human Experience, Being the Seven Illusions that Derail Personal Power, Purpose, and Peace, and Knowing the Seven Human Expressions of Grace. Today, we are discussing being. So, nice to have you back, Simran.
Yay!
Yay.
I'm so excited to be back. That was a mouthful. Thank you for so eloquently sharing all of that.
There's so much to talk about with you. So yeah, but yeah, so I'm really excited to get into this one. This was a very interesting read. Finished it officially on Sunday night, and yeah, so took a little more time with this one, like I wanted to do with the last one. So I'm glad I did. And so we'll talk about being here. So second in the series. How does this book being fit into the overall self-realization series? So how does this one fit?
This one is probably my favorite of the three, and I questioned whether it needed to be the first book of the series
I remember.
or the second. We both went back and forth around that, but I believe it has ended up in the right space. Living the Seven Blessings of Human Experience really pertains to the multidimensional aspect of self that is walking in the world right now. It is the identity, the personality that a person is, and all of the challenges and conflicts and complexities that we face in life every single day, and learning how to master those things and rise to a higher octave. But while we're doing that, if we are present and we allow ourselves to take those steps of mastery that living offers, what we start to do is sink into levels of being. And that's where this book, Being the Seven Illusions that Derail Personal Power, Purpose, and Peace, come in, because so many individuals, they want to be of purpose, Chris. They want to feel like their life has meaning. They want to tap into their personal power. And yet, because of the challenges, conflicts, obstacles, and complexities of life, so often those three things elude us. The personal power, the purpose, and the peace are quite elusive. But when we start to discover the different levels of being that exist within us, then there's a greater understanding as to why we're creating those things that we're having to live through. And we can bring all levels of being present within us in terms of understanding that they're operating at the same time all the time. Otherwise, what we're doing is we're only focusing on one aspect of being, and the others are kind of running amok in our lives, and that's where we go unconscious.
Mm-hmm. I see. Yeah, no, I like that it talks about, even in the subtitle, personal power, purpose, and the peace. I think there are a lot of books that go for one or two of those. Sometimes they go for the personal power, and then once you get that, well, then what? And then, okay, well, then the thing is purpose, right? So, but when you're always striving for that, you never really attain that peace, right?
Well, they're inextricably linked.
They are, and I think that's the missing component to a lot of other maybe systems or philosophy. Sometimes is it's not quite complete like that. So this is more the full circle, I would think, with that.
Most definitely. And I think ultimately what our soul desires us to achieve is peace. But the mind and the human and our curiosity and wonder of being in these bodies, there's a level of our own energy and our emotions and all of that that we have to master. And that's where that personal power comes in.
Mhm.
We often use the ego to determine purpose, and that's an error because that tends to create more conflict and challenge. But
Mhm.
when we really ground in our personal power, we rise to the purpose of the soul, and that purpose comes with more ease, with more flow. It comes with more law of attraction. It's able to express in the world in a very grounded and calm way, and there's not this push of needing to be recognized or the significance that the ego requires. There's more of a state of understanding and unconditional presence to the world as it is, and a focus upon creating from the place of creativity and celebration, which is really what the soul desires. And that peace comes through in every creation that is put out there.
Mhm. Definitely, yeah. No, we're always looking for that piece, and so many are searching for it, and it's been described as a kind of a hole that people are always trying to fill, right? And and so I think this is certainly helpful, and I'm glad it's fallen where it has. I agree that after reading, living, and then going into this one too, it is in the right spot because it really it's a very it's not it's a challenge to face. There's things in here that need to be talked about or need to be explored. I think and so that's why you call them illusions. And I think to go through each one, the seven that you outline here, and talk about why they are illusions and how you can work through them. Is incredibly important to really finding that purpose and that peace as well. Because could you describe kind of like what I was grasping for words there, why it's kind of maybe difficult to read initially or to face, I should say.
Well, I think that all of these books really did mean to come out at the same time. And in your infinite wisdom as the director of Red Feather Publishing, I really applaud and appreciate the fact that you could see that these were books that really had to be timed in a certain way and come out at a certain time, uh, because this is where our world is and it's what it needs. But also, these three books represent the one human being. They are the multidimensional aspects of each one of us. And so they're not meant to be necessarily read linear, although they can be. They can be read book one, book two, book three, or in any order. But what I really want people to do is get both books, Living and Being,
Mm-hmm.
and to read a paragraph or a few lines or open it as an oracle at the beginning of the day and let that sit within them throughout the day to really marinate and become the medicine, and not read any more than that for that day. And then in the evening, open up being in the same way, whether it's a few lines, a bolded section as an oracle, a paragraph, and allow that to sink in. And in this way, the material will become infused within oneself. It will automatically start to integrate. And the link between our separate parts will find union, because there is a bridge that has to take place between our unorthodox blessings that we tend to create and the illusions by which we live. And that's where living and being become one.
I understand. Yes, I'm glad we talked about how are best to approach these because, and I think I was going to say you should do it this way, but it's going to be different for every person. The way that I am approaching this here, I think it's kind of like a double, twice, basically, essentially. So really focusing on more of the bold and then going back into the rest of the text more, to kind of pull out the pieces. But yeah, and I think too, it's good to stop and contemplate different sections as you're going through them too, and and if there's something that resonates, just take the time, right, to
Yeah.
really think about what that means, and also too, not only that, why you stopped there, because I would imagine that if you are sort of like there's something that really resonates with someone as they're reading it, that's what they need to learn, right? That's the thing that's most important at that moment, and that's worth recognizing, right?
Yes, I place within the opening part of each book 5 different ways that these books can be read.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard from many readers, they've chosen many different ways. A lot of people really are using them as oracle decks and just opening to what comes to them in that moment. And then there's another set of readers where they look at the table of contents in living and they figure out where they are. So if they are going through a conflict, they really focus in on that section and those 7 levels that they must move through. But now they've also gotten being, and they go to the correlating section in being that matches up with conflict in living, because there's an illusion that correlates to each of the blessings. And when we open up that grid, that matrix within us, and bring all of that to light and awareness, then all of a sudden we start to see ourselves from a different kind of overarching 360 view that we can't possibly see from inside of our bodies, from behind our eyes. And that brings about a whole different experience of witnessing, of higher self, and of the one mind that is the collective, which is also what being points to.
No, exactly. Yeah. So, and you mentioned that way to read it, and every part of this is important too. Even the preface, I was going to mention, talking about like how to read it, how to approach the material is very important. And I did notice with this book specifically that it has a slightly different format. It's similar but different to that, as far as you have the chart at the beginning, but then you also have these questions. You have questions in living,
Yes.
but they're asked in a different way with this. Then also too, you have a petition as well. Could you go into like the why that perhaps is and why it's approached differently?
Yes, living is written in a way that really approaches the inquiry from the outside in, because we're encountering things that are in our outer world and trying to make sense and trying to reconcile. So that book is positioned in a way to help draw the reader's attention back in towards themselves by linking the outer world and the inner world together. Being is a little bit different because it's really helping you to first go within and then see how that internal landscape really is creating the external, the collective that is taking place. And to truly empower our souls and to truly empower ourselves to rising to the highest level of being means a complete and whole recognition of all of who we are. And so that's why each section goes into something about the self, like hear thyself. Is the first section that has to do with time, or receive thyself has to do with the area of duality. And so each of the sections, you're really brought back to yourself to really listen on every single level as to what those various levels of being are trying to say to you. When bringing them into full recognition and holding all levels of being fully present and aware in every aspect of your life, then all of a sudden you move in the world with a greater sense of wholeness and a greater integrity and capacity to understand your link to the collective and the outer world experiences that are taking place.
Definitely, yeah. That's perfect. That's perfect. I understand. As you're talking it through, it's like, oh yes, that makes perfect sense too. Because even with the format too, as someone's writing with the other format, it's more familiar. But this is coming from, you're already drawn in here now, and so you're kind of like, it's a flow back out too. And I do like the idea of the petitions. It's almost like prayer-esque, essentially. And asking, and then and it actually really, it's a good confluence between how you approach the you and all of those, the way it's written as well, just acknowledging those different parts of yourself so it can be more fully realized and more whole too. So
yes, living is so much more the conscious / unconscious self.
Right.
Being is that underworld. It's the subconscious. It's all those aspects that float around our subculture within us, and from the utmost bottom feeder of ourselves to the part of us that's just beneath the surface that we can't quite grasp. And as those come into realization, the beauty of these petitions is that the petition speaks the unconditional love that those shadow and animal and monster and inner demon parts really do have. But they speak then a petition to bring themselves forward and to a higher octave, that now we're petitioning for change in the world. And one thing I know is all people really do want to do good. They all want to serve. They all want to create more light and create change in the types of things that are happening that are so heartbreaking and so tragic, or the things that want to make us apathetic and indifferent. And to realize that not only can we lift up those aspects of ourselves that are contributing to that separation consciousness that's outside, but that we can also put forth and focus that energy through petitions of prayer that now bring wholeness to the world. All of a sudden, it gives meaning even to those darkest parts of ourselves, which I think are the hardest to embrace for people. And for us to be able to love those aspects of ourselves and embrace them, it then all of a sudden cultivates a level of compassion and kindness to even see the most hardened person, the most vicious person, even the one who is the terrorist or the killer, to finally see from behind their eyes and within their hearts the pain and suffering that they too have experienced and gone through. There's a meeting that takes place that is heart to heart, soul to soul, and it does not endorse or encourage the acts perhaps that have taken place, but it all of a sudden brings a sense of humanity and compassion into the conversation, which is so much of what the world needs right now to come together, to be unified, and to heal.
I'd agree. It's needed now more than ever. I was right. As you said, compassion. I wrote down compassion because that's true compassion. That's very difficult. It seems more difficult now than it's always been difficult. So
It's always been.
for people to get to that point, to be able to try to understand the motivations for people who have done terrible things, maybe like why, what is that, what is beyond, upbringing, whatever those scenarios, what else is there, or why else was that, and be able to try and understand, so you can, be able to understand and change the world, not just person by person, to be able to understand those motivations and things. So,
I think intellectually we understand wounded people wound people, abused people abuse people,
that's what I'm saying, right?
haters hate. But to get to a level of integration where we can really sit by them or sit in front of them, or even just hold them in the understanding of the degrees of pain that they have experienced, purely because we experienced the same thing, maybe didn't choose to put it out there in the same way,
Right.
but we did experience the same thing. It's a powerful way to approach oneness consciousness. And oneness needs to stop being thrown around as a word that's just out there, especially in the spiritual fields, until we begin to really embody oneness. Only then can it actually manifest externally.
I'd agree. I would think. I think that there are some who equate oneness to only a certain level of persons, whereas that I would think to really get to that point is to have that compassion, to be able to reach out to all people and see that in all people. And I think that as you go through each of those illusions, some that those who have studied spirituality may have heard of before or be familiar with, like maybe time or duality, those kinds of things. But then you go up into like identity or evolution or war. I mean, those are fascinating and very different in a different way. And I think kind of like next level illusions almost, because duality, that's a spiritual principle that's been around for centuries, that kind of thing. But the illusion of evolution, or the illusion of war, that's fascinating, really.
Yes, yeah, and it will be triggering to some, to their egos, to look at these concepts, because, like you said, duality is something we kind of know is out there. But unless we're willing to go deeply into what these illusions really are and understand that the duality that's out there is really the separation that's inside, we cannot dissolve the illusion. And I think one of the greatest illusions of all is evolution. We're trying to think we need to get somewhere, whether that is as human beings, whether that is from a technological perspective, whether that is from a spiritual perspective, and especially in that spiritual perspective, we feel like there's somewhere to ascend to, or that we have to take enough courses or read enough books or walk enough caminos or do enough things to achieve a certain status. That is the illusion. We are already there. We just haven't brought our lens and our consciousness to it. And to get to that place of realization that we are literally bamboozling ourselves, it helps to bring an understanding to that Ouroboros where we really are chasing our own tails, not realizing we're the very thing that we are seeking. And so I invite individuals to sink into being and to be triggered, to be willing to go, oh my goodness, that sounds blasphemous. I'm shocked. Because part of the reason that this book was written was to throw a cold bucket of water on people, and especially those of us in the spiritual field. I think all of us start off doing good things and with the greatest of intent, but so often it's in that place that we become blind and deaf again. And so to approach everything from a state of innocence and new eyes and say, maybe I don't know as much as I think I know, even though I see myself as more awakened than others, is really the highest place of humility that we can all come to.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's a Zen phrase that, I know that I know nothing, that's a different level, right? So getting to that point, it's a grounding spiritual book for those who, think they, you think you've ascended, but I have this for you. There's some stuff.
Yeah, and the power in that is if those of us who consider ourselves awakened or higher consciousness or higher vibration or whatever we want to claim in the world as the light bearers, if we are holding these lower levels of being unconsciously, then we are more the culprit of what is showing up out in the world as contrast, because we have that higher frequency. And I don't mean that from a hierarchical standpoint. That's another one of the illusions, hierarchy.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean that from a state of presence, that as each step of presence is achieved, it requires more presence. It means you cannot fall asleep. You cannot go backwards. You cannot make the choice to say, I've reached a certain place. It is that point where you have to continue to say, as you said, I know nothing. What else is there?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. Prior to reading this, I wrote down one day, it is like, the more that you learn, the more is expected of you. The more progress you make, the more is in anything.
Yes.
The more progress you make, the greater duty you have to live that, right? So I think that sometimes as you're saying, so many get to a certain stage, like, okay, well now I'm here and you're here and all that, and no, we're always that cyclical learning process, or should be.
Yes.
And then the higher and I'm saying I'm there, but I mean the higher anyone attains at anything, really, I think it's their duty then to use that, to utilize that for the betterment of any situation, really, whether it be a spiritual situation or a business situation or anything. I think it's a principle that's applicable in so many aspects of life.
Yes. What brought me to this realization of all these levels of being was actually an experience in my life, which is where the book Living came from. And I had always been the one to focus on growing myself as much as possible, really doing a lot of self analysis, introspection, meditation, all of those things. And there was this strong desire to just create beauty and light in the world. And as I encountered this darkness, this corruption, this thing that was so foreign to me, the first thought that most people would have is, I got to stay away, as far away from that. But because of my past work around signs and symbols, what I came to realize was, okay, if I am so elevated in my consciousness at this point, and this is still showing up in my life, then there's something here to learn, not only about the world, but about myself, something else that's even more deeply hidden. And I think one of the myths that so many people have about personal growth or spiritual growth is that the farther I get on my spiritual path, the less I'm going to create that is in contrast to that, or the less I'm going to encounter that is of a lower vibration. I really believe it's the opposite. I think each step of mastery that we attain we will be given more to ascend into greater mastery. And it is kind of like what you just said, he to whom much is given, more is given. And so, to be able to understand that when individuals or experiences show up that feel very dark or very heavy, whether that's personally or whether that's on the news or out in the world,
Mhm.
all of those things are invitations to go deeper into the places of self-realization, of oneness mind, of an understanding of compassion,
Right.
and the realization of personal power, purpose, and peace.
Right. Exactly. As you're saying that too, and I tried to pull out a couple quotes here. One is life uses you to unveil your unique service, and so I think within that, as you're learning, that's the purpose part of it, I suppose, right? So you have to get through those and um, you understand the why, kind of, and embody that and embrace that, I should say, as those things come through, to be able to then continue to progress and then help others progress as well. I would think.
Yes, most definitely. And, as an example to illustrate that, my leaning was always initially towards fashion. I was a fashion designer and in the fashion industry for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turned towards the spiritual field and I went into creating beauty and graphics and books.
Mm-hmm.
But where I got pulled into was the legal system in terms of a legal situation and a very dark and corrupt legal situation. And I never would have imagined that situation and willing to stay in it and present to it would have led to these three books, which really feel like my life's work. And that's why I'm really in advocacy of people staying with their lives, staying present to what's going on in their experiences, because those are hidden gateways and doorways to your purpose, to what the soul wants to unfold through you. And while doing so, will assist you in attaining a level of mastery and self-realization that in no other way would have been as easily attainable.
Exactly. So that you reminded me of it. It's a whole different track. I mean, the great thing about these is that they're approachable from any system, any denomination, or whatever. I'm coming from a specific one, and so it's you pray, right? People pray, okay, but your prayers aren't always answered, okay. Your prayers
Right.
might be right. It has to be, it's going to be God, in my case, but the universe's will, or however you define that. Okay, you're in this process because you need to learn from this process. Okay, and so it's for a reason. You have to kind of accept that and understand what the lesson is, and then move through it, really. And I think, for anyone from any walk of life, can gain those principles and see that through these ones I've read so far, and I'm looking forward to knowing her yet too. But yeah, so it seems more is as more is revealed, more is given. As we're
Yes, you need to quote that one as Chris McClure. That's a perfect one. It is true. And I wrote these, they're not religious. They really are for a person to tap into their own spiritual sense of self. For people who are very linear or who are scientists, or those even that don't believe in anything, let's say they're atheist, you can pick up these books and still find yourself.
yeah.
These are practical guides, as if the soul had sent you with a set of manuals the day you were born to say, whatever you encounter, your answers are right here.
Right.
And for those that are scientists, I say, try it out, explore, be your own experiment. And for those that are spiritualists, I'd say, have your communion, have that sense of ceremony and ritual and sacredness that you long for. And those that are religious, I would say, let this be the questioning and the confirmation of your own prayers, because that's what these books will entail and bring about in your life.
Exactly. Even within the book itself, you say question everything that's written to you. You have to test it too. It's important to do. And I think any philosophy, any whether it be spiritual, or so you can't just blindly follow it necessarily. I mean, you should have to be able to work within what's given and test it out right for yourself. So that's important
Yes.
throughout this here. 2. So we're going to be out of time before we know it already. It goes to fly on by. So I did want to ask a little bit about you touched on the multidimensional aspect of things. So there's some really neat sections that towards the end here of the book, that are sacrifice and emulsify and then multidimensional. What do those portions of the book really signify? What do those mean?
They are really representative of what needs to shift and change in order to then rise into knowing, which is the third book.
Okay.
They are the keys and the gateways into then our humanity. And we have often heard, the word sacrifice, but it's always been done at that lower level place of, I have to sacrifice this to get that, or things are being taken from me, or the sacrifices that one has to make in order to even live. And in this sense, what we're saying is sacrifice the lower self, the lower octaves for a higher octave, so that you can rise into greater feeling. Sacrifice the lies for the truth. Sacrifice your numbness, apathy, and indifference. And instead allow yourself feeling and experience, expression, and emotion. And so it is just shifting that into a place. And to emulsify really does mean dissolve, completely dissolve everything and all that you are, because it is in that absorption that we then find our humanity. And it is our humanity that is the doorway to divinity. And so each of these books are steps and stages, while also different levels and layers. And the grids within the book, the way they're laid out, the questions, the sections, they all help to let you see the multifaceted self that you are, because we really are like diamonds, beautiful crystal prisms. And when we can see all of these faces, then we have a true understanding of how we attain the light body, the crystalline body, the violet flame body, all of these things that they will learn about in knowing the 7 human expressions of grace.
Okay, so you're giving a teaser there for that. Okay. That's exciting. So yeah, you mentioned there's a fascinating portion here I did mention, which is the body layers of growth. That could be a whole book unto itself.
Yes.
And also the sheaths. I was really curious about the sheaths. Could you kind of explain what that concept is? What are the sheaths?
Yes. So all of the reason that there are 7s in each of these books is because we create these veils around us, and they end up in layers of 7 due to the 0 to 7 years that we are initially imprinted as children of these things. And then the echoes of experiences create additional layers. So as these additional layers are created, we end up with these sheaths around our bodies. You could call them blocks. You could call them layers of identity. They could be seen as many different things. And so within the back of each book illustrates the sheaths that you have. And it also then goes into further detail in terms of how living, being, and knowing are linked, so that you can see those across as well as vertically. And then within each one of the grids, particularly in the book on illusions, there are going to be certain places of inquiry so that you understand what the addiction is. You're going to discover where the mirror or the disease is in your life. You're going to find where personal power is activated. Those special 7 keys are within the book Being. And then you'll find out how purpose is fulfilled and how peace can arise by what you are here to cultivate. And so as you move through the 7 layers of each of the illusions, you will find that more awareness surfaces within you, so that you feel more grounded and rooted in a truer self than you've ever known before.
Perfect. Thank you. That was very claritative. I appreciate that. So we kind of know what lies ahead here for you here with Knowing coming out a little later, hopefully this year. We'll come to that. And then, so how do people get in touch with you? How do you interact? Are you on social media? Can your readers and your followers interact with you?
Yes, they can go to my website, iamsimran.com, and find out more about everything that I do. My social media is also there, but I am on Instagram at iamsimran1111. I'm on Facebook and Twitter, LinkedIn, all of the places that people go, and they can either look up 1111 Magazine or Simran Singh 1111 and find me there. And of course, they can find me definitely at REDFeather Publishing. Because my new life's work is sitting right there in your beautiful library of books that you create. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you. It's really a beautiful book, as is Living, and we're looking forward to to knowing, and other things in the pipeline as well. So thank you to Simran and everyone to tuned into this event. It's always lovely, and we'll have another one, or many more probably. Being the 7 Illusions That the Real Personal Power, Purpose, and Peace is available on REDFeatherNBS.com and wherever books are sold. So thanks again to you and to everyone who tuned in, and have a beautiful day, all.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.